This is Community Radio Networks. It is Wednesday, the 5th of June, and we have all the information here for you to take on the day. All coming up right here on Community Radio Networks, and we'll start with the world news coming up first. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news, read by Shabnam Madgil. After a marathon 6-week, 7-phase voting, results were declared for the Lok Sabha elections 2024. The BJP-led NDA won 292 seats and prevailed over the opposition alliance India, which bagged 232 seats. Both NDA and India Bloc will be holding key meetings today on the way forward. The contest between the BJP and India alliance is a reflection of a broader ideological battle. Prime Minister Modi has secured a third term, but the BJP will need the support of other parties in his coalition, primarily Nitish Kumar's JDU and Chandrababu Naidu's TDP. The Lok Sabha election results did not throw up that landslide victory the BJP-led NDA had hoped for and what was projected by the exit polls. It is a fascinating election result. One cannot pinpoint a single instance when both sides could celebrate wins. The BJP has fallen well short of a majority on its own, but its pre-poll coalition, driven by the Phir Modi Sarkar narrative, is comfortably past the 272 mark. The opposition, clobbered over the last decade, has a verdict that generally puts it back in the game. It is a big personal win for the Gandhis in Amethi and Raebareli. The Congress is about 140 seats behind the BJP, but the result means that Rahul Gandhi is not quite the pushover that the BJP had declared him to be. The BJP has already declared victory and is not flinching at the results. And for the party, the Modi juggernaut continues. There is a jolt, but outwardly the party is celebrating Modi 3.0. Being the categorical single largest party by a mile and a half, the BJP will obviously have more control over a coalition to offer a stable government. But Narendra Modi's ability to run a coalition will be tested, especially with the likes of Nitish Kumar and Chandrababu Naidu, both mercurial politicians and veterans of coalition politics. The BJP may not be able to railroad legislation so much and will need to revisit the style of the Vajpayee-era coalition. Numbers alone are not the worry. The way the BJP has decimated regional forces over the last 10 years and the allegations of using agencies and institutions to curb dissent have made its allies wary. In the present context, the result emphasizes the need for a more accommodative political agenda. Prime Minister Modi expected to be sworn in for a record equaling third term on the 8th of this month after key allies pledged their continued support a day after a humbling election verdict that saw his party lose its majority in parliament. Modi is a populist who has dominated Indian politics since coming to power in 2014, will for the first time need the support of regional allies whose loyalties have wavered over the years, which could complicate the government's reform agenda. And the federal cabinet met this morning and recommended the dissolution of parliament, a constitutional formality before Modi can form a new government. He and his new cabinet scheduled to be sworn in this Saturday. And as we mentioned, the NDA won 293 seats in the 543-member lower house of parliament, more than the 270 needed to form a government. And the weakened majority for Modi's alliance could pose challenges for the more ambitious elements of the government's reform agenda. With the party losing most ground in rural areas, investors say land and labor reforms that had been expected to unlock value and growth will probably fall by the wayside. Newspapers said Modi's halo had dimmed, while the Indian Express says a banner headline reading "India gives NDA a third term and Modi a message." His own victory in his seat of Varanasi, considered one of the holiest cities for Hindus, was subdued, with his margin of victory down from nearly 500,000 votes at the last general election in 2019 to a little over 150,000. And the India alliance also expected to meet today in New Delhi and discuss a future course of action. A gunman fired shots at the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon and was wounded in an exchange of fire with troops, according to the Lebanese army. The attacker, a Syrian national, was taken to the hospital for treatment and soldiers were searching through the area. The U.S. Embassy said small arms fire was reported near its entrance this morning. The Syrian man arrested after a shooting near the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, with the diplomatic mission saying its personnel were safe. The Israeli military's widespread use of white phosphorus munitions in its cross-border attacks on southern Lebanon is placing civilians at grave risk and adding to the further displacement of local people, according to the Human Rights Watch. And in a new report, this New York-based global rights group has said it had documented the use of white phosphorus by Israel in attacks on at least 17 municipalities in southern Lebanon since October of 2023. Israeli airstrikes near the Syrian city of Aleppo killed an Iranian military advisor 2 months after the Middle East came to the brink of a major war as Israel and Iran engaged in unprecedented direct attacks on each other's soil. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel was prepared for a very intense operation along the border with Lebanon, where Israeli troops have exchanged near daily fires. Israel announced a new military campaign against Hamas in central Gaza, where Palestinian medics said dozens of people had been killed in airstrikes, complicating expected talks between mediators to try to finalize a ceasefire deal. And the nearly 800 far-right Israelis have stormed the mosque's grounds under the protection of Israeli police ahead of the provocative flag march taking place in occupied Jerusalem. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Israeli police deployed in strength in annexed East Jerusalem ahead of an annual march by Jewish nationalists that comes with tensions sky high nearly 8 months into the Gaza offensive. And the so-called Jerusalem Day flag march commemorates the Israeli army's capture of the city's eastern sector in the 1967 Arab-Israeli War. This flag march of thousands of far-right extremist Israelis will take place in occupied Jerusalem, commemorating Jerusalem Day, an Israeli public holiday that marks the day that Israel gained full control over Jerusalem in 1967. The government is expected to approve a decision to summon an additional 50,000 reservist soldiers in Israel today, increasing their total ranks to 350,000. Slovenia's parliament has passed a decree recognizing a Palestinian state following last week's recognition by 3 other European states. And a response from Palestinian group Hamas on Israel's ceasefire proposal revealed by President Biden is still awaited, according to White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. As the U.S. asked the UN Security Council to endorse its proposal to secure a ceasefire in Gaza, key mediator Qatar pointed out contradictions in the statements of Israeli ministers and said it was waiting for a clear position from Tel Aviv on the peace deal outlined by President Biden. Separately, the U.S. has urged the 15-member council to adopt a resolution supporting the Gaza ceasefire proposal presented by President Joe Biden. The U.S. House has passed a Republican-led bill that would impose sanctions on the International Criminal Court after its top prosecutor recommended war crimes charges against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The legislation passed in a 247 to 155 vote. The Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, led by Texas Republican Chip Roy, would require mandatory sanctions and visa restrictions on any foreign person working or providing funds for the International Criminal Court in prosecutions against the U.S., Israel, or any other U.S. ally that is not part to the ICC. And the vote came weeks after the International Court's chief prosecutor Karim Khan filed applications for warrants of arrest for Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. President Joe Biden issued an executive order yesterday imposing new limits on the number of migrants allowed to enter the U.S. at the southern border once a daily threshold is exceeded. The order allows border officials to turn away those crossing illegally without processing their asylum claims, using a law previously attempted by former President Trump in 2018. President Biden tried to address a major liability for his re-election campaign by taking this executive action to significantly restrict asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border. His administration is quickly invoking this authority to shut off access to asylum for migrants who cross the U.S.-Mexico border illegally, a significant attempt by President Biden to address head-on one of his biggest political vulnerabilities. President Biden's administration blocking migrants from claiming asylum at the U.S.-Mexico border until attempted crossings fall under new actions rolled out yesterday. The asylum ban goes into effect today, barring any legal challenges that might block it. And the restrictions apply to migrants crossing between ports of entry, but access will not be blocked for people who seek an appointment to approach a legal port of entry through a government-run cell phone app. testimony in the gun trial of Hunter Biden began yesterday as jurors for the first time heard the president's son describe in his own voice the years he spent battling non-stop drug addiction. The ex-wife of U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is expected to testify today about the younger Biden's drug use, which prosecutors contend he lied about to illegally buy a gun. Senator Lindsey Graham said he thinks most Americans would not have to face the gun charges for which President Biden's son Hunter Biden is currently on trial in Delaware. And Graham defended the president's son against the gun charges, but said he thinks the second indictment Hunter Biden faces, charging him with tax crimes, is more legitimate. A number of states held primaries for races up and down the ballot yesterday, with President Biden and Donald Trump inching ever closer to their respective nominations and a couple notable Senate matchups solidifying. Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, South Dakota, and Washington, D.C. held some of the last presidential primaries of the cycle. Guam and the Virgin Islands will officially cap off the presidential primary on Saturday when they both hold their Democratic contests. But last night also featured other prominent primaries, such as in Montana, where Senator John Tester officially got an opponent in Tim Sheehy. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, an establishment-backed Republican delivered a surprise blow to Donald Trump, and Representative Andy Kim got one step closer to being the state's next senator. New Jersey dealt Trump an unexpected defeat when Republicans nominated real estate developer Curtis Bashaw over Trump-backed candidate and Mendham Borough Mayor Christine Serrano Glessner in the New Jersey GOP Senate primary. One of the clear winners from the last night's primaries was the New Jersey establishment, as several candidates, including Bashaw and Rob Menendez, won their respective contested primaries. Dr. Anthony Fauci discussed threats made against his life while testifying at a House subcommittee hearing the country's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the virus's origins. He was the former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and former White House chief medical advisor, touched on several topics during his hearings on Capitol Hill, saying that the country still needs to be better prepared for another possible health crisis. San Diego Padres infielder Tucupito Marcano has been banned for life by Major League Baseball for betting on baseball games, as well as announcing his punishment. The MLB also yesterday banned 4 other baseball players for a year apiece for violating betting rules. Boeing Starliner mission will make a third attempt at launching its first crewed flight test today, in a milestone that has been a decade in the making. The new spacecraft's maiden voyage with humans on board is on track to lift off atop an Atlas V rocket at 10:52 a.m. Eastern Time from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, and the historic event will stream live on NASA's website. Veteran NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams are set to ride aboard the Starliner capsule on a journey that takes them to the International Space Station. United States President Biden will mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion in France this week as he tries to demonstrate steadfast support for European security at a time when some allies fear Donald Trump threatens to upend American commitments if he wins another term in the White House. And this trip comes as the deadliest fighting on the continent since World War II continues in Ukraine, and allied countries struggle to find ways to turn the tide against Russia, which has recently gained ground on the battlefield. It is also set against deepening cracks between the U.S. and many European allies over how to manage the ongoing Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. President Biden arrived in Paris this morning and was welcomed by French officials and an honor guard. Tomorrow he'll visit hallowed ground near the beaches of Normandy, where rows of bone-white headstones mark the graves of U.S. soldiers who died to bring an end to World War II. He will also speak on Friday at Pointe du Hoc, a spot on the French coast where Army Rangers scaled seaside cliffs to overcome Nazi defenses. He will be meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky in France to discuss how we can continue and deepen our support for Ukraine, he said. On Saturday, he, along with his wife Jill, will be honored by French President Macron with a state visit, including a military parade in Paris and a banquet at the Élysée Palace, as well as business sessions with the leaders are to discuss strengthening their alliance, trade and security cooperation for the upcoming Olympic Games. His trip to France will be followed by another to Italy later this month for the annual Group of Seven summit, a rare double-header of international diplomacy in the middle of the presidential election season. He will skip a subsequent gathering in Switzerland where leaders will be focused on the war in Ukraine to attend a campaign fundraiser in Los Angeles with Hollywood stars. And Vice President Kamala Harris will represent the United States instead. The 80th anniversary of the Allied invasion on D-Day that punched through Hitler's Western defenses and helped precipitate Nazi Germany's surrender 11 months later brings mixed emotions for French survivors of the Battle of Normandy, and they remain eternally grateful for their liberation but cannot forget its steep cost in French lives. Members of the U.S. Congress said the ruling Chinese Communist Party that sent in tanks against peaceful student protesters 35 years ago in the heart of Beijing is as ruthless and suppressive today as it was in 1989, a stark warning as they commemorate the anniversary of China's bloody crackdown in Tiananmen Square. And Representative Raja Krishnamurthy, the ranking Democratic member of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, warned that Chinese leader Xi Jinping would resort to violence as his predecessors did to achieve his goals. An Italian court has upheld Amanda Knox's final remaining conviction stemming from the murder of her British roommate Meredith Kercher in 2007. She was convicted in 2009 of slander for falsely accusing Patrick Lumumba of murdering Kercher in the Italian city of Perugia. An appellate court in Florence has upheld that conviction today. She was previously cleared of Kercher's murder by the Italian Supreme Court in 2015. Two people have been arrested after Nigel Farage had a milkshake thrown over him while launching his personal election campaign in Clacton. The Reform UK leader was leaving a pub after carrying out media interviews when a woman appeared to hurl a McDonald's banana milkshake over his face and suit jacket. Essex police said the 25-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of assault. And Prince William has been putting his best foot forward during public appearances since his wife, Princess Kate Middleton, announced her cancer diagnosis in the middle of March. And his visit to St. Mary's Community Hospital last month was no exception. The future king met with staffers and posed for photos at the facility located in the Isles of Scilly off the southwest tip of England, and even briefly updated them on Kate's health, telling a hospital administrator that the 42-year-old Kate Middleton was doing well, before adding that their 3 children were jealous he was traveling to one of their favorite family destinations without them. The Ukrainian parliament has passed a new law to strengthen the status of the English language in the Eastern European country. In future, a good command of English will be a prerequisite for many Ukrainian civil servants, according to the parliament in Kyiv's decision yesterday. Russia welcomes Turkey's reported desire to become part of the BRICS group of nations, according to a Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, saying the subject would be on the agenda of the organization's next summit. Peskov said there was heightened interest in BRICS, a group comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Ethiopia, Iran, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates. A special commission tasked with investigating Russian and Belarusian influence in Poland was beginning its work today, according to Prime Minister Donald Tusk's announcement in Warsaw. And the second largest election in the world starts this Thursday. 27 European member states will choose lawmakers for the European Parliament. Go to vote if you don't want to go to war. That's the stark choice that Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk is presenting ahead of the European elections this weekend, and his team is highlighting security, or more precisely the threat of Russian aggression, as the big theme. Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni is traveling to Albania today to thank the country for its willingness to host thousands of asylum seekers and tour the sites of 2 migrant detention centers. And the president of Cyprus said he won't open another route for irregular migration by letting through more than 24 asylum seekers now stranded in a UN-controlled buffer zone that bisects the war-divided island nation. Germany said it was considering allowing deportations to Afghanistan after an asylum seeker from the country injured 5 and killed a police official in a knife attack. Deportations to Afghanistan from Germany have been completely stopped since the Taliban retook power in 2021. But a debate over resuming expulsions has resurged after a 25-year-old Afghan was accused of attacking people with a knife at an anti-Islam rally in the western city of Mannheim. last Friday. And that brutal attack has inflamed a public debate over immigration in the run-up to the European elections and prompted calls to expand efforts to expel criminals. The suspect, named in the media as Suleiman Ate, came to Germany as a refugee in March of 2013. The Saudi government said pilgrims can expect average high temperatures of 44 degrees Celsius during Hajj, which last year saw thousands of cases of heat stress. The expected climate for Hajj will witness an increase in average temperatures of 1.5 to 2 degrees above normal in Mecca and Medina. And the forecast indicates relative humidity of 25%, rain rates close to zero, average maximum temperature of 44 degrees Celsius. Last year, more than 1.8 million pilgrims performed Hajj. According to official figures, more than 2,000 people suffered heat stress after temperatures rose to 48 degrees Celsius. Top officials in South Africa's African National Congress have had initial talks with representatives of 5 other parties over a coalition or other agreement to form a government, but no decision has been made and the talks are at an early stage. South Africa faced an election deadlock after the long-ruling ANC lost its 30-year majority in an election last week, but no party managed to overtake it. The ANC remained the biggest party. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks, and the Philippine military chief said the Chinese Coast Guard seized 1 of 4 food packs dropped by a plane for Filipino Navy personnel at a territorial outpost that has been surrounded by Chinese vessels in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. China, Ukraine, and other nations sent their congratulations today as Prime Minister Modi's government began preparations for his swearing in for a record 3rd term following the world's largest democratic election. His BJP planned to meet with allies later today to discuss the government's formation. Official results from the Election Commission showed the BJP-led National Democratic Alliance won 294 of the 543 seats, more than the 272 needed for a majority, but far fewer than had been expected. And for the first time since the BJP swept to power in 2014, it did not secure a majority on its own, winning 240 seats, far fewer than the record 303 it won in the 2019 election. Prime Minister Modi met today with Indian President Draupadi Murmu and tendered his customary resignation along with that of his cabinet ahead of the swearing-in ceremony expected this Saturday. And congratulatory messages from leaders of regional countries including Nepal and Bhutan were the first to arrive. In the election, the opposition Congress Party won 99 seats, improving its tally from 52 in the 2019 polls. And among its key allies, the Samajwadi Party won 37 seats in northern Uttar Pradesh in a major upset for the BJP. The All India Trinamool Congress took 29 seats in West Bengal, and the DMK won 22 seats in southern Tamil Nadu. Combined, the opposition India coalition won a total of 232 seats. More than 640 million votes were cast in this marathon election held over 6 weeks, the world's largest democratic exercise. And the Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Modi, today recommended the dissolution of the 17th Lok Sabha following a meeting at his residence. Prime Minister Modi recommending the dissolution of the 17th Lok Sabha to the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, who accepted the resignation and requested Prime Minister Modi and the Council of Ministers to continue till the new government assumes office. Maharashtra Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has expressed the desire to be free from government as he wants to do BJP organization work. From Pappu to Shehzade, Congress leader Rahul Gandhi has been the prime target of BJP's ridicule for years. Jabs at the Gandhi family have been the BJP leader's main line of attack at the main opposition Congress in every election over the past decade. But as Congress inches towards a 100-seat tally in this Lok Sabha election, its best show in a decade, and the India bloc's tally defies all exit polls, the Gandhi siblings have played a central role. Mr. Rahul Gandhi virtually launched his campaign with the Bharat Jodo Yatra across the length and breadth of the country, while the actual impact of the Yatra in terms of the Lok Sabha seats won is a subject of data and debate. There is no doubt that his public interactions on the trail brought him out of television screens to the people and contributed to shattering the perception the BJP had created of him. Prime Minister Modi set for a historic third term today, but with a vastly diminished majority in a rare electoral setback for a leader who has held a tight grip on the nation's politics. The Election Commission of India declared the results yesterday, and Congress, which is part of the opposition India bloc, won 99 seats compared to 52 in the earlier election. The BJP-led NDA winning 290 seats and prevailing over the opposition alliance India, bagging 232. The cabinet will meet tomorrow, and the single agenda item is the dissolution of the 17th Lok Sabha. Also, we do have many election results coming in, but it is the highlights of the Lok Sabha elections right now. And Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav hailed the triumph of the India bloc in Uttar Pradesh as a landmark victory for the state's backward classes, the Dalits and minorities. This victory, he claimed, was a testament to the power of the PDA, the strategy and the collaborative efforts of the opposition alliance. And everyone knows who Kangana Ranaut is. You may know her from her roles in Fashion and Queen, or because of her controversial anti-minority right-wing views, or more recently you may know her because she just won the Mandi seat as a member of parliament from the BJP in the Indian elections. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath plants sandalwood saplings at his residence today on World Environment Day, emphasizing commitment to protect and promote nature. Also, we have a day after the surprising Lok Sabha election results that the India bloc and the NDA have called meetings of their top leaders and allies to discuss the next course of action. We do have in the third term that the country will write new chapters of big decisions, and it's Modi guarantee, said the Prime Minister. Our victory is the win of the world's biggest democracy. Among all the political parties in the country, the Samajwadi Party took the biggest leap with a 7-fold increase from its 5-seat Uttar Pradesh tally in 2019. And the Samajwadi Party's previous best Lok Sabha poll performance was in 2004, when it had won 35 seats in Uttar Pradesh. Sharad Pawar, Maharashtra's perennial power player, fought the general elections with his back to the wall. Last July, the Nationalist Congress Party split with most of the top leadership, going with Ajit Pawar, who also took the party symbol. At 83, he had to rebuild the party from scratch just 9 months before elections. And as the results streamed in, he told the media, "I hope today's results will prompt many to seriously think what they have done in the past, and those who are prudent will know how people in Maharashtra are thinking." Yesterday's outcome, he added, will energize the 3 constituents of the Mahavikas Aghadi to fight the Maharashtra Assembly elections in November with renewed energy. Team India will begin its highly anticipated T20 World Cup campaign today as the side faces Ireland in its opening match in New York. The side enjoyed a stellar outing in the only warm-up match it played last week, decimating Bangladesh by 60 runs. Virat Kohli did not take part in the game, and the combination that India would feel that the game will draw significant interest tonight. Australia all-rounder Cameron Green says he is ready to bat up and down the order at the T20 World Cup after being utilized in several roles during the IPL. The right-hander had a slow start batting at a number 3 for Royal Challengers Bangalore, but thrived when slotted into the middle order after being dropped for a few games. Australia's batting lineup at the World Cup, which is being co-hosted by the US and the West Indies, is well set, but his versatility could come in handy if selectors opt for a second all-rounder. Max O'Dowd hit an unbeaten 54 to guide the Netherlands to a 6-wicket victory over Nepal in their T20 World Cup Group D clash yesterday. And O'Dowd, patient knockoff 48 balls, saw the Dutch home safely at the Grand Prairie Stadium in Dallas, finishing at 109 for 4 of 18.4 overs. Earlier, Nepal had been restricted to 106 all-out after a disciplined bowling performance by the Netherlands. After losing the toss, Nepal's batsmen struggled to get to grips with moist, overcast conditions yesterday after being put into bat following a slight delay of play caused by a wet outfield. Rain led to the abandonment of the day's other fixture in Barbados between defending champions England and Scotland at the Kensington Oval. And Afghanistan produced a dominant bowling and batting performance to thrash debutants Uganda by 125 runs in the T20 World Cup in Guyana. New York officials are preparing for the Super Bowl on steroids as thousands descend upon Nassau County for the clash of India and Pakistan in the group stage of the T20 World Cup on this Sunday. The two sides form one of the most intense rivalries in sport, and the temporary 34,000-seat stadium in East Meadow, New York will be bursting at the seams with millions more watching on TV. New York State Governor Kathy Hochul has said last week that there will be increased security for the World Cup after reported threats, including those specifically related to the India-Pakistan fixture. Operations appeared to go smoothly, and the security blanketed the stadium in New York as it hosted the first of 8 matches as South Africa beat Sri Lanka by 6 wickets. The U.S. are co-hosting the tournament with the West Indies, with matches staged also in Dallas and Florida, as cricket hopes to woo American fans before returning to the Olympic program in 2028. The PTI has challenged notices sent by the Federal Investigation Agency to its leadership over a controversial post on the official account of former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Separately, a joint investigation team from Lahore visited Adiala jail to interrogate the former Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi regarding the May 9th violence cases registered against him. And in another major relief, the Islamabad High Court acquitted PTI founder Imran Khan and former Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi in the Cypher case. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you, but I do have financial news that I will bring to you in just a minute. Stay with me right here on Community Radio Networks. All right, let's get you now all the financial news that you need to know for today. And today is Wednesday, the 5th of June. U.S. stocks have nudged higher before the bell this morning, buoyed by tentative optimism for interest rate cuts amid signs of slowing labor demand and a cooling economy. S&P 500 futures rose roughly 0.2%, while Dow Jones Industrial Average futures added 0.1%. Contracts on the tech-heavy NASDAQ 100 led the slight gains, up 0.4%, and the three major gauges managed to close narrowly in the green yesterday. Stocks have had a bumpy ride as the market wavers over whether to interpret a softening in economic readings as positive or negative for the chances for rate cuts from the Federal Reserve. And data out yesterday showed job openings fell to a three-year low in April. Cracks in the labor market could spur the Fed to begin lowering borrowing costs, but they are also a sign the economy could be headed for recession rather than a soft landing. The U.S. job market in April cleared a key hurdle in its slow return from the COVID-19 pandemic when a wonky economic chart known as the Beveridge curve finished its own journey from where it had shifted during the health crisis back to where it was in 2018 and 19. U.S. job openings have fallen to the lowest level since 2021, but they remained at historically strong levels despite high interest rates and signs the economy is slowing. The Labor Department reported yesterday that employers posted 8.1 million vacancies in April, down from a revised 8.4 million in March, and the March figures had originally come in at 8.5 million. Ahead of the Trump-Biden showdown this November, two surprise election results this week from opposite ends of the world are reminding investors of the uncertainty that uncertainty in political regimes can bring. South of the U.S. border, Claudia Sheinbaum won a landslide election to become Mexico's first female president, and the presidential win was expected, but the surprise came as her Morena party nearly obtained a supermajority in Congress, and Mexican markets were roiled on concerns the ruling government would be able to push through constitutional amendments. The Mexican stock exchange plummeted nearly 6% on Monday, while the peso fell 4% versus the U.S. dollar and a slightly larger amount versus the yen. And yesterday, it became clear that the supermajority would be narrowly missed, and stocks rallied sharply. And over in India, anticipation ground general elections left investors tense as Prime Minister Modi's BJP faced a heated contest. Opinion polls over the weekend suggested a landslide win for Modi and his agenda, briefly sending India's benchmark Sensex index to a record high. However, as election results were tallied, the margin of victory narrowed, and Indian stocks plunged 7%, erasing $386 billion in market value. Meanwhile, India's currency, the rupee, experienced its most volatile session in a year. All in all, the fallout from uncertainty was better than feared in both countries. Markets did not disintegrate. NVIDIA Corporation and Advanced Micro Devices Inc. chiefs showcased new generations of the chips powering the global boom in AI development, deepening a rivalry that's shaping the future of artificial intelligence design and adoption. Elon Musk confirmed he diverted artificial intelligence chips away from Tesla Inc. to his X-Core and XAI Corporation ventures, offering explanations both for the redirected shipment and internal NVIDIA Corporation emails casting doubt on the car maker's procurement plans. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Company shares surged as much as 16% in pre-market trading today after the company reported revenue that beat analysts' estimates on a big jump in sales of servers built to handle artificial intelligence work. Fiscal second quarter revenue increased 3.3% to $7.2 billion. BlackRock Inc., Citadel Securities, and other investors are backing an upstart Texas stock market to challenge the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ Inc. The Texas Stock Exchange has raised $120 million and plans to file registration documents with the U.S. SEC. The Texas Bourse will try to entice companies seeking relief from increasing compliance costs at the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. And while entirely electronic, there are TXSE, headquartered in Dallas, bolstering a metro area that has been gaining financial jobs from the likes of Goldman Sachs Group Inc. and Charles Schwab Corporation. The Texas Stock Exchange will focus on enabling U.S. and global companies to access U.S. equity capital markets and will provide a venue to trade and list public companies and the growing universe of exchange-traded products. aiming to handle its first trades in 2025 and host its first listing in 2026, and that is the Texas Stock Exchange. Microsoft and Google slashing jobs from their otherwise very successful cloud divisions as the companies shift gears to focus on AI. Microsoft is cutting hundreds of roles from its Azure division, Strategic Missions and Technologies team, a group that was formed to focus on cutting-edge technologies such as quantum computing and space engineering. And more than 500 million Ticketmaster customers may have had their personal information stolen in a cyber attack at Live Nation, and now that data is for sale on the dark web for $500,000. Live Nation said in a regulatory filing with the SEC that it first detected the breach on the 20th of May when it noticed unauthorized activity within a third-party cloud database environment that contained data primarily from its Ticketmaster subsidiary. And a week later, a criminal threat actor on the dark web offered to sell the Ticketmaster data. The group claiming to be behind the breach said it stole the data of some 560 million customers and offered to sell those details for $500,000. And the data reportedly includes names, addresses, phone numbers, and credit card details of Ticketmaster customers. A federal advisory panel yesterday voted not to recommend the psychedelic drug MDMA for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder, flagging the drug's risks of abuse, potential for heart problems, and inadequate data. The vote comes amid a resurgence of medical interest in the hallucinogens, long associated with high-risk recreational use. According to a recent report, the public stock trading platform E-Trade is having internal discussions about whether or not it should ban Keith Gill, otherwise known as Roaring Kitty, over potential market manipulation. The report comes from the Wall Street Journal, which shared that the Morgan Stanley-owned brokerage hasn't yet made a decision on what it will do, but people familiar with the matter say the discussion is being had inside the firm. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters shared that the Amazon labor union will now affiliate with the more established union, marking a major step for the online retailers' workers. Teamsters said that the affiliation decision was approved unanimously by the union's board, and the exact details have not been made clear this time, but the union is seen as a powerhouse in labor, representing nearly 1.3 million workers in North America. In America's soda wars, the king has always been Coca-Cola, with Pepsi long standing in second place until now. The runner-up spot has been taken over by Dr. Pepper, which surpassed Pepsi to become the second best-selling soda in the United States last year. Pepsi, which has been number 2 since 1985, has been losing its market share over the past several decades, while Dr. Pepper has been gaining. And last year, Coca-Cola captured a whopping 19.2% of the soda market by volume. Pepsi and Dr. Pepper were neck and neck, but in the end, the peppery blend of 23 flavors finished ahead with a market share of 8.34% versus Pepsi's 8.31%. Rounding out the top 5 sodas are 2 other brands owned by Coca-Cola, Sprite in 4th place at 8.1% and Diet Coke in 5th at 7.8%. Campbell's Soup raised its forecast this morning for annual net sales growth, banking on a recovery in demand for its ready-to-eat soups and meals and from its acquisition of Rao's sauce maker Sovus brands. Shares of the company were up 1% in pre-market trading this morning after it also beat Wall Street expectations for quarterly profit helped by its cost-saving measures. President Biden may have just received a timely election boost from an unlikely source. OPEC's decision to put more oil into global market potentially keeps a lid on gasoline prices through the end of the year, which could help cool voters' wrath over costs at the pump. And Donald Trump's campaign said it raised nearly $300 million last month as it benefited from a new surge of support among small dollar donors on top of an existing strength with billionaires. The potent combination is clearly helpful for Trump as he tries to close a fundraising gap with President Biden ahead of a final campaign sprint this summer and fall. Former President Trump has long been known as a real estate mogul, and current President Joe Biden made his reputation as middle-class Joe. Here's the reality of their finances. Trump, at 77, the son of the late successful real estate developer Fred Trump, took over his business and renamed it the Trump Organization. And in addition to Trump Media and Technology Group, his net worth is also comprised of $1.1 billion in real estate, besides the company's valuation of $9.4 billion, greatly increasing his net worth. Forbes estimated that it was $7.5 billion, nearly $6 billion of what was attributed to Trump Media and Technology Group. And as for Biden, who is now 81, he became one of the youngest people ever elected to the U.S. Senate at the age of 29, and his father was in car sales and gave his son a 1967 Corvette Stingray. And the president still has the car, which is worth an estimated $100,000 today. A new study has sought to understand that issues different generations are most focused on this election cycle. And for America's youngest adults, abortion, gun rights, and education played second fiddle to one major concern. It is 91% of adult Gen Zers thinking that housing affordability is the biggest issue they will consider when deciding who to vote for this November. It is Gen Zers, those are 18 to 27 years old, millennials 28 to 43 years old, and Gen Xers 44 to 59 years old, and the boomers are 60 to 78 years old. American rapper Kanye West, now legally known as Ye, is being sued by his former Yeezy assistant Lauren Pisciotta for sexual harassment and wrongful termination. West has responded with a countersuit, vehemently denying these allegations and accusing Pisciotta of ulterior motives. And for the first time in a decade, California companies dominate the Fortune 500 list. The 70th annual ranking of the largest U.S. companies was released with the glow of the Golden State all over it. Out of the top 5 companies, just one, Apple, in third place, is based in California. Arkansas-based Walmart topped the list, followed by Washington-based Amazon. United Health Group of Minnesota came in fourth, followed by Nebraska-based Berkshire Hathaway. The Fortune 500 list is made up of 500 companies that together represent 2/3 of the U.S. GDP, with $18.8 trillion in revenues, $1.7 trillion in profits, and $43 trillion in market value as of March. And combined, the firms employ 31 million people around the world. Overall, 57 California companies were on the list, even though 5 companies from the state that were on the last year's list dropped off. That's more than 52, headquartered in Texas and New York, respectively. And from California, some newcomers include food delivery company DoorDash and real estate investment firm Prologis, cleaning product manufacturer Clorox, and software company Workday. We do have the top 5. Apple, located in Cupertino, is 3rd. Alphabet, located in Mountain View, is 8th. Chevron, located in San Ramon, is 15th. Meta Platforms, located in Menlo Park, is at number 30. And Wells Fargo, located in San Francisco, is 34th. Other notables entries on the list include Walt Disney, Intel, Uber Technologies, Salesforce, Netflix, Visa, PayPal Holdings, Gilead Sciences, Live Nation Entertainment, Airbnb, Williams-Sonoma, and Monster Beverage in Corona. California has long been a hub of economic success, and with the world's recent AI explosion, America's technology capital is ready to soar to even greater heights. New York Mayor Eric Adams likes to boast that since he took office in January of 22, the city has regained all of the 300,000 jobs it lost during the pandemic. Local officials note that the city and its suburbs added more total jobs over the past year than any other metro area in the United States. A trio of young fossil hunters made an extraordinary discovery when they stumbled upon an extremely rare Tyrannosaurus rex fossil during a family hike, and researchers say it could change what we know about dinosaurs. If you haven't yet, there's a decent chance you'll be making some sort of voyage to DFW Airport for an upcoming summer vacation. All we have to say is good luck. A report says the most stressful airports in the U.S. and DFW Airport found its spot near the top of the list. DFW ranked as the 3rd most stressful airport in the nation for travel, following only Chicago O'Hare International Airport and New York's JFK International Airport. The 2nd busiest and 2nd largest airport in the U.S., DFW saw 33.7 million passengers in 22 and flies to 258 destinations, which adds to the stress of the traveler experience. The airport has a rating of 84%. Passengers say it's easy to get to and easy to pass through TSA, although the airport is crowded. And the rivalry between postal service workers and dogs is a trope as old as time, but there may be some truth to that long-standing feud, especially right here in Texas. A new report from the U.S. Postal Service found that Texas is one of the worst states in the nation for dog-biting incidents with postal workers, coming in at number 2 on the list. Dallas ranked as one of the worst cities for dog bite incidents, coming in at number 7. Houston ranked as the second worst city for dog biting incidents, followed only by Los Angeles. And Fort Worth ranked as the 4th worst city in Texas for digs biting postal workers, with Grand Prairie and Garland tying for 9th worst. The Kremlin has dismissed a report from Microsoft that said Russia was ramping up a disinformation campaign ahead of the Paris Olympic Games, calling it absolute slander. And a Russian cyber gang is believed to be behind a ransomware attack that disrupted London hospitals and led to operations and appointments being cancelled, according to the former head of the British cybersecurity in London. Major London hospitals cancelled operations after a cyber attack on a key service supplier had a major impact, particularly on blood transfusions. And a BBC cricket pundit has apologized for posting a photo on social media of Rishi Sunak with an Adolf Hitler mustache as he attacked the government's policy over Gaza. Former Meta engineer is suing the company, saying he was fired over the handling of the Gaza content. He has accused the company of bias in its handling of content related to the situation in Gaza, claiming in a lawsuit that Meta fired him for trying to help fix bugs causing the suppression of Palestinian Instagram posts. Italy's competition authority today fined global tech giant Meta $3.8 million for a lack of transparency in its use of data and management of Instagram and Facebook accounts. And Elliott Management has rebuilt a substantial stake in SoftBank and is pushing the Japanese tech conglomerate founded by Masayoshi Son to launch a $15 billion share buyback. India's economy is on a roll, chalking up 8.2% GDP growth in the last fiscal year and a boom in foreign investments. The growth is in part thanks to a shift in supply chains and investment flows as companies try to stop relying solely on China. And this has boosted Prime Minister Modi's appeal, sending him to a historic third term as the country's prime minister in the country's general election. But Modi's win this time around also comes with a huge loss. While he's still hugely popular in India, his party, the BJP, lost its majority in parliament, reflecting resentment among voters amid rising inequality. India's unemployment rate rose to 8.1% in April from 7.4% in March. BJP's likely loss of its majority is a testament to India's political system, but it will also make the dream of becoming the next China harder to achieve. Decision-making and policy changes in the world's largest democracy, after all, can take far longer than they do in communist China, a one-party state. India's stock market plummeted, erasing $386 billion in market value today, as tallies signal that Prime Minister Modi's ruling party was struggling to win a majority of seats in the national elections, a stunning result after exit polls showed he was on pace for a landslide victory. The NSE Nifty 50 index tumbled 5.9% in Mumbai, its worst day in more than 4 years, as counts showed the BJP and its allies in the NDA were leading in more than 290 seats, slightly more than 272 needed for a majority in parliament, and well short of the roughly 350 they won in 2019. And the Indian rupee fell the most in a year, and the 10-year yield rose. It is businesses linked to the government's development goals that have tumbled, with Adani Ports and Special Economic Zone Limited taking a nosedive. The yield on the 10-year bond rose 8 basis points to 7.03%, the biggest jump since October. BSE Sensex fell more than 10% limit, the first time in the exchange's history, and the rout eroded the combined market value of BSE-listed companies by $386 billion to $4.73 trillion. And we do have a billionaire ally of Narendra Modi seen the value of his industrial empire crash by $1 trillion rupees after initial counts indicated that the result of the Indian general election was closer than expected. And shares in the main listed unit of Indian billionaire Gautam Adani's company Adani Enterprises fell 25% following the early polling, which suggested a reduced majority for Prime Minister Modi's party. And Mr. Adani, the multinational group's billionaire chairman, is a close ally of the Indian leader and his right-wing BJP. For Gautam Adani, an underwhelming election win for Modi's party is worse than a short seller attack. And the Indian tycoon's wealth has tumbled by almost 25 billion, the biggest one-day loss for an Asian billionaire ever after the Modi-led political alliance failed to deliver the landslide electoral victory predicted by the exit polls. It is this financial news from India, where Prime Minister Modi declared himself victorious in a heated election race, but will likely have to rely more on allies to get things done. IIT Delhi placements 2024 season concluded, and this year 677 job offers were made, and the average salary stood at 20.46 lakhs per year. Indraprastha Institute of Information Technology, Delhi, has concluded IIT Delhi placements. A total of 677 job offers were made this year, comprising of 548 full-time positions and 129 internship opportunities. The International Cricket Council has worked in collaboration with partners to make the additional release of the T20 World Cup tickets and ensure as many fans as possible can be part of the ongoing event being hosted by the West Indies and the United States. This release includes general admission tickets to the highly anticipated India versus Pakistan fixture in New York this Sunday, which were previously exhausted. Other matches of the global event now have more categories available, including for fixtures at the Grand Prairie Stadium in Texas and the Broward County Stadium in Florida, where there are now limited general admission tickets for sale. Fans wanting the ultimate World Cup experience in either the West Indies or the US can secure tickets to the Premium Club and the exclusive Diamond Club, where fans can rub shoulders with the legends of the game in the best seats in the house. And fans can visit tickets.t20worldcup.com to secure your seats. The International Air Transport Association urged Pakistan and Bangladesh to remove barriers to airlines repatriating ticket revenues after Nigeria released the vast majority of blocked funds. According to the World Trade Body, Pakistan and Bangladesh collectively owe $731 million out of a global total of $1.8 billion in blocked airline funds. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif arrived in Shenzhen as he kicked off a 5-day visit to China. This is the Premier's first visit to China following the February 8th elections and will likely see the inauguration of the second phase of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC project, and a number of agreements being signed between the two nations. The Sindh Investment Department and the Swiss Business Council signed a memorandum of understanding to promote trade and investment. A calibration aircraft successfully test-landed at the new Gwadar International Airport, a key milestone of the airport project, which is expected to be operational by the fourth quarter of this year. And Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb expressed hope for a key policy rate cut this year by the State Bank of Pakistan in line with inflation today. The State Bank's monetary policy meeting scheduled for the 10th of this month has received more attention from the stakeholders, as the policy would be announced without getting input from budgetary measures and talks with the IMF for another loan. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you. I do have the final segment of our program today coming up in just a minute. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. This is the last and final segment, the third and final segment of our program today. And today, ladies and gentlemen, is Wednesday, the 5th of June. Let's get you some stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date. A huge section of the city of Constantinople in Turkey set ablaze on today's date in the year 1870. And when the smoke finally cleared, 9,000 homes were destroyed and 2,000 people were dead. And this disaster happened on today's date in 1870. And in 1887, Edmondo de Amicis published perhaps the best account of this disaster in a book called Constantinople. And on the 5th of June in 1944, more than 1,000 British bombers dropped 5,000 tons of bomb on German gun batteries placed at the Normandy assault area, while 3,000 Allied ships crossed the English Channel in preparation for the invasion of Normandy, called D-Day. The day of the invasion of occupied France had been postponed repeatedly since May, mostly because of bad weather and the enormous tactical obstacles involved. And finally, despite less than ideal weather conditions, or perhaps because of them, General Eisenhower decided on today's date to set the next day as D-Day, the launch of the largest amphibious operation in history. And Ike knew that the Germans would be expecting postponements beyond the 6th, precisely because weather conditions were still poor. And among those Germans confident that an Allied invasion could not be pulled off on the 6th was Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who was still debating tactics with Field Marshal Rundstedt, who was convinced that the Allies would come in at the narrowest point of the Channel, and Rommel believed it would be Normandy. Rommel's greatest fear was that German air inferiority would prevent an adequate defense on the ground. It was his plan to meet the Allies on the coast before the Allies had a chance to come ashore. And he began constructing underwater obstacles and minefields and set off for Germany to demand from Hitler personally more panzer divisions in that area. It was Allies preparing for D-Day on today's date in 1944. In one of the most significant speeches of the Cold War, it was Secretary of State George Marshall who calls on the U.S. to assist in the economic recovery of post-war Europe. His speech provided the impetus for the so-called Marshall Plan, under which the U.S. sent billions of dollars to Western Europe to rebuild war-torn countries. U.S. Secretary of State George Marshall calls for aid to Europe on today's date in the year 1947. And the U.S. Congress passed the Economic Cooperation Act, more popularly known as the Marshall Plan, which set aside $4 billion in aid for Western Europe. And by the time the program ended, nearly 4 years later, the U.S. had provided over $12 billion for European economic recovery. And British Foreign Secretary likened the Marshall Plan to a lifeline to sinking men. On the 5th of June in 1956, in an appearance on the Milton Berle Show, Elvis Presley, he set his guitar aside and put every part of his being into a blistering, scandalous performance. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was called Hound Dog. Happened on today's date, the 5th of June in the year 1956. And we do have, by the end of 1955, that Elvis Presley had nearly 18 months of non-stop touring behind him and 24 singles already under his belt, though his only hits were on the country and western charts. He was a hard-working and hard-to-categorize up-and-comer, but the next 6 months would make him that superstar. You ain't looking for a hound dog, crying all the time. It was his debut single, his new label, which propelled Elvis to the top of the pop charts. But if Heartbreak Hotel is what made him the king of the radio and record stores during the spring of 1956, it was television that truly made him the king of rock and roll. And if any one moment might be called his coronation, it was that night on the Milton Berle Show. Today's date in 1956 was not his first television appearance, nor even his first appearance on Milton Berle. But Hound Dog made him climb up the charts. Well, they said you was high class. Israel responded to a buildup of Arab forces along its borders by launching a preemptive aerial attack against Egypt. On today's date in 1967, Jordan subsequently entered the fray, but the Arab coalition was no match for Israel's armed forces. In 6 days of fighting, Israel occupied the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, the Golan Heights of Syria, and the West Bank and Arab sector of East Jerusalem, both previously under Jordanian rule. And by the time the UN ceasefire took effect on the 11th of June, Israel had more than doubled its size, including claiming the old city of Jerusalem from Jordan. It was the Six-Day War that began on today's date in 1967. Egypt, however, would eventually negotiate and make peace with Israel, and in 1982 the Sinai Peninsula was returned to Egypt in exchange for full diplomatic recognition of Israel. Egypt and Jordan later gave up their respective claims to the Gaza Strip and the West Bank to the Palestinians, who opened land for peace talks with Israel beginning in the 1990s. A permanent Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement remains elusive till today. Shortly after midnight on the 5th of June in 1968, Senator Robert Kennedy is shot at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles after winning the California presidential primary. Immediately after he announced to his cheering supporters that the country was ready to end its fractious divisions, he was shot several times by 24-year-old Palestinian Sharon Sharon. He was pronounced dead a day later, and the summer of 1968 was a tempestuous time in American history. Both the Vietnam War and the anti-war movement were peaking. Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated in the spring, igniting riots across the country. In the face of this unrest, President Lyndon B. Johnson decided not to seek a second term in the upcoming presidential election. Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy's younger brother and former U.S. Attorney General, stepped into this breach and experienced a groundswell of support. But he was perceived by many to be the only person in American politics capable of uniting the people. Beloved by the minority community for his integrity and devotion to the civil rights cause, and after winning California's primary, he was in the position to receive the Democratic nomination and face off against Richard Nixon in the general election. But it was not to be, as he was fatally shot on today's date in 1968. And Sirhan, who was born in Palestine, confessed to the crime at his trial and received a death sentence. However, since the California State Supreme Court invalidated all death penalty sentences in 1972, he has spent the rest of his life in prison. According to the New York Times, he has since said that he believed Kennedy was instrumental in the oppression of Palestinians. Hubert Humphrey ended up running for the Democrats in 1968, but lost to Richard Nixon. And during the intense fighting, 597 North Vietnamese were reported killed, and the U.S. casualties were 56 killed and 420 wounded. This, ladies and gentlemen, was when U.S. troops abandoned Hamburger Hill, and that was on today's date in the year 1969, when Hamburger Hill was a name evidently derived from the fact that the battle turned into a meat grinder, and the purpose of the operation was not to hold territory, but rather to keep the North Vietnamese off balance, and the decision was made to abandon the mountain shortly after it was captured, and the North Vietnamese occupied it a month after it was abandoned. Hamburger Hill, because of that and other battles like it, U.S. emphasis was placed on Vietnamization, turning the war over to the South Vietnamese forces rather than engage in direct combat operations. On the 5th of June in 1981, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention published an article in its Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report describing 5 cases of a rare lung infection, PCP, in young, otherwise healthy gay men in Los Angeles. It was unknown at the time, but the article is describing the effects of AIDS. Today, the article's publication is often cited as the beginning of the AIDS crisis. The article prompted medical professionals around the country, particularly in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, to send the CDC information about similar mysterious cases because it is first detected circulating among gay men. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, as it will be dubbed the following year, was colloquially referred to as a gay cancer and formerly dubbed gay-related immune deficiency before the term AIDS was coined in 1982, a year later. AIDS is not lethal in and of itself. Rather, it severely impacts the immune system's ability to fight off illness, leaving the patient vulnerable to all manner of infections, particularly opportunistic infections. PCP is one such opportunistic infection, and it was one of a handful of illnesses whose increased occurrence in the year 1981 revealed that there was an HIV/AIDS epidemic. And within a few years, the AIDS epidemic became the major public health crisis of the late 20th century. Although many continue to believe it only affected gay men, due largely to the misconception that it was a gay disease, it would be 2 years before the New York Times published its first front-page article about AIDS, and 4 years before then-President Ronald Reagan first mentioned it publicly. 2 of the men mentioned in the study were dead by the time it was published, and the 3 others died a short time later. By the end of the millennium, nearly 775,000 Americans died of AIDS-related illnesses. The first scientific report on AIDS is published on today's date in 1981. And on today's date in 2004, Ronald Wilson Reagan, the 40th President of the United States, dies after a long struggle with Alzheimer's disease. Reagan was also a well-known actor and served as governor of California, was a popular president known for restoring American confidence after the problems of the 1970s. He was born in 1911 and died on today's date in the year 2004. On the 5th of June in 2004 itself, some 40 guests watched as pop star and actress Jennifer Lopez weds her third husband, the singer Mark Anthony, in an intimate ceremony held in the backyard of her home in Los Angeles. She was born in 1970 in the Bronx in New York and went on to earn admiration in Hollywood as a triple threat. She originally served as a dancer, most famously as a fly girl in the popular television series In Living Color, but soon earned notice as an actor for portrayal of the murdered Tejana pop singer Selena in that 1997 biopic. And it was on today's date that Jennifer Lopez weds her third husband, singer Mark Anthony, in this very intimate ceremony held in the backyard of her home in Los Angeles. They divorced in 2012. On the 5th of June in 2013, Americans learned that their government was spying broadly on its own people. That's when The Guardian and later The Washington Post published the first of a series of reports put together from documents leaked by an anonymous source. The material exposed a government-run surveillance program that monitored the communications records of not just criminals or potential terrorists, but law-abiding citizens as well. 3 days later, the source unmasked himself as Edward Snowden, a National Security Agency contractor. But the question remained, was he a whistleblower or a traitor? In the wake of the 9/11 attacks and the perceived need for heightened national security, the U.S. government relaxed its rules around surveillance, and the first story published in The Guardian revealed that the NSA was collecting and monitoring the telephone records and the texts of citizens. Days later, The Washington Post and The Guardian reported that the U.S. government was tapping into servers of 9 internet companies, including Apple, Facebook, and Google, to spy on people's audio and video chats, photographs, emails, documents, and connection logs as part of a surveillance program called PRISM. Later articles revealed that the government was even spying on leaders of other countries, including Germany's Angela Merkel. Ladies and gentlemen, it was Edward Snowden who disclosed the U.S. government operations on today's date in the year 2013. A petition was started to have him pardoned, but the government rejected it in 2015. Lisa Monaco, then President Obama's advisor on Homeland Security and counterterrorism, said Snowden should return home to be judged by a jury of his peers, not hide behind the cover of an authoritarian regime, and stop running away from the consequences of his actions. In 2017, Moscow extended Snowden's right to asylum until 2020. He was then given Russian citizenship in 2022, released a memoir called Permanent Record in 2019. Edward Snowden discloses U.S. government operations on today's date in 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, those were some of the stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date. I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power for their support of community radio networks. Also, big thanks going out to Houston EB5, the Ahluwalia Law Offices, the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, Digital X-Force, Kinzer Law, My Kolachi, Ruchi Palace by My Kolachi, Shri Vimal, Vimal's Venue, Eggholic, Mystic Mandala, and Flash Brush Productions. Huge thanks to all of you for supporting community radio networks. This Friday is the 20th anniversary of Taste of the Cowboys, and it is going to be at the Ford Center at the Star. Also on Saturday from 11 to 1 is the South Asian Business Alliance, SABA's Franchise Expo, from 11 to 1 at the First United Bank in McKinney at Craig Ranch. Do check out the South Asian Business Alliance, and I encourage you to become members. Also on Saturday, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, it is BAPS Charities hosting their annual In the Joy of Others Walk Run to extend support to Irving Cares and MetroCare, two invaluable organizations dedicated to serving the community. Now, this walk is going to be at 3111 Olympus Boulevard, starting at 8 o'clock this Saturday, the 8th of June. And a two-day holistic festival that is happening on Saturday and Sunday, both days 11 to 5, 8th and 9th of June, a festival of life and wellness at the Plano Nature and Retreat Center. For information and booths and registration, please call Vijay 972-750-1419. And you can get more information also at holisticfestivaloflife.com. On Thursday, the 13th, Hassan Sumro Entertainment presents Up Close and Personal in Dallas, Texas, a meet and greet with Shehzad Nawaz. It is happening at the Sheesh Lounge in the Colony. That is on Thursday, the 13th at 7:30. Announcing the Immigrant Journey Awards Gala celebrating Immigrant Heritage Month. This is happening on Friday, the 14th of June from 6:30 to 9 at the Communities Foundation of Texas. Immigrant Journey Awards in honor of Immigrant Heritage Month, celebrating remarkable immigrant achievements and lots of inspiration there on Friday the 14th from 6:30 to 9. Also on Friday the 14th, Badshah's Pagal Tour coming to the Curtis Culwell Center, and you can get more information at 360shows.com. It is being brought to you by 360 Shows and Diamond Productions. Organized by the Vaishnav Sangh of Dallas, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Katha Maha Utsav, happening on the 14th, 15th, and 16th of June at the DFW Hindu Temple, the Ekta Mandir in Irving. And Brahma Kumari is bringing you World Meditation Hour on Sunday, the 16th, from 6:30 to 7:30. Let us together make effort to be angels of peace by spending an hour sending thoughts of healing and peace for the whole world. You can register at BK Brahma Kumari's Dallas. bkdallas.org. A-Cube Media is presenting Shreya Ghoshal live in concert on Sunday, the 16th of June at 7 o'clock in the evening. You have tickets available at Curtis Culwell Center, and you can also get discounted tickets at sulekha.com. Shreya Ghoshal live for you on Sunday, the 16th of June at the Curtis Culwell Center. International Day of Yoga Seminar, Burnout to Balance, a day filled with activities for body, mind, and soul, on the 22nd of June from 8 to 4 at the Collin College Conference Center. And Mahatma Gandhi Memorial of North Texas, in partnership with the Consulate General of India, is inviting you to International Day of Yoga on Sunday, the 23rd from 7:30 to 9:30 at the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial Plaza. We are hoping to see you all there. And the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, King's Return, bringing you this concert free to the public on Saturday, the 29th of June. As a special thanks for the community's support of the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, Morton Meyerson is proud to present this free concert featuring the incredible talent of Dallas natives, King's Return. Also on the 29th, we do have Shankar Ehsan Loy live in concert, 24/7 Entertainment, Mera Box Office, and Charisma Dreams Entertainment's presentation of the legendary trio Shankar Ehsan Loy on the 29th. 9th at the Toyota Music Factory in Irving. Please do go ahead and get your tickets for this event. And on the same evening, Nan's Vision is presenting a glamorous night with Shilpa Shetty on the 29th of June at 7 o'clock at the Grandian Event Center. You can call Nan's Vision for more information, 469-305-6836. Of course, you all are following the T20 World Cup that is going on in the United States as well as in the West Indies. Do want to mention that Salim Suleiman will be here on the 3rd of July. And the 2024 Texas Super Kings schedule is out for July, starting on the 5th of July at 7:30 at the Grand Prairie Stadium when the Texas Super Kings open their season against the LA Knight Riders. It is Ellen DeGeneres who will be in Dallas on the 10th of July, and on the 14th of July, Cricket Academy Grand Launch, a fancy schmancy meet and greet with Rohit Sharma, one of the modern greats of the game, opening his Cricket Academy in Dallas-Fort Worth on the 14th of July. The hitman is coming to Texas. Crick Kingdom Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma is all set to make its grand debut in Dallas. If you need more information about this event, please call Shalu. Her number is 201-245-6299. Crick Kingdom Cricket Academy by Rohit Sharma in partnership with DFW Indoor Sports, bringing this event to you on the 14th of July. And the 19th, 20th, and 21st of July, it's a Carom Grand Masters happening right here in Dallas. Please mark the 10th of August for Yade, and these will be in memory of Kishore Kumar, Lata Mangeshkar, and Muhammad Rafi. And the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce bringing you their Wellness and Workplace Conference on the 22nd of August. And do mark the 31st of August for this year's Anand Bazaar in celebration of India's Independence Day. Those, ladies and gentlemen, some of the events happening here in town, and we do hope that you will be a part of all of these. And that is my show for today. For those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-17.